The Print off the Cuff, presented by IIFL Wealth and Asset Management, corporate partner AU Small Finance Bank, in alliance with Jindal Steel and Power Limited, airline partner SpiceJet.
Welcome to the Print off the Cuff. I am Manasi Phadke, Senior Associate Editor at The Print. I have with me our Editor-in-Chief, Shekhar Gupta, and we have a very special guest today, Dr. Anil Kakodkar, who absolutely needs no introduction. He is the former chairman of India's Atomic Energy Commission, the Chancellor of Homi Bhabha National Institute, and chairman of the Rajiv Gandhi Science and Technology Commission. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the Print of the Cuff.
And I think we should also mention that we are in a very unique location.
Absolutely.
Also. This is Anu Shakti Nagar in Mumbai. This was founded by Dr. Bhabha, the pioneer, more than 6 decades ago, and this has been the nursery of so much talent in Indian nuclear science and engineering. And you, sir, are one of its doyens.
Well, doyens are not known, but in that sense, professionally, I am born and brought up here.
Right.
So for me, this is my karma bhumi.
Karma bhumi. So, sir, now you've seen nuclear science from all sides, civilian, military, energy, medicine, all kinds of things. Where does nuclear science stand today in the world?
Well, I think, see, today, let's talk about energy first and then come to other parts. But even today, around 10%, 10 to 11% of world's electricity is supplied by nuclear energy. There was a time when this was as high as around 17%. And not that nuclear has not declined very much, although it has declined.
The rest
has gone up. So
solar and wind particularly.
Correct. So that is one, but it is still an important energy option. With the emphasis and awareness about global warming and the need to resort to energy sources or supply from sources which do not emit carbon dioxide, nuclear has become even more important because it is the only large-scale, dispatchable power or base load power which can grow. That way, large hydro is of that kind, but it has almost reached saturation, at least in India. And that dispatchable power or base load power is very important in terms of managing large grids. So that is as far as energy is concerned. I think other applications or benefits of atomic energy are even more spectacular in my view. For example, health. One of the challenges in health area relates to cancer. And radiation, although many people fear that radiation causes cancer, but radiation is an important treatment modality for treating cancer, and it's I think a huge program worldwide. Then there are kind of applications in agriculture. There are applications in waste management. For example, you can, in principle, kill all the pathogens which we have in the public waste disposal system, sewages, and bring it back into the as a utility, waste to wealth. It becomes a good manure.
Right.
So and then nuclear mutants are contributing significantly to agriculture. For example, in India, we have gone through great success in terms of green revolution.
Also irradiation.
Yeah, but exactly. So, but irradiated, that is, first I'll talk about mutants. The varieties developed through nuclear mutation they are contributing significantly to India's the pulses story as well as oilseed story.
So, sir,
And then, of course, preservation of food products, preventing
so,
spoilage.
sir, I'll halt you on this. I'll interrupt you on this because I don't think many people are aware that India's pulses, the seeds and varieties have been developed through nuclear mutation. So, how exactly has it happened, and what is it?
Well, actually, see, in fact, right in Trombay, BARC, which is a premier center for research and development in atomic energy, it pursues all applications of atomic energy.
Right.
All that I described and maybe many more. Now, so nuclear mutants and developing these varieties has been a major program. Although, these varieties need to be proven on large scale cultivation trials. And those are normally, they exist in agriculture universities.
Yes, not just on tiny plots.
Yeah. So we carry out the experiments on tiny plots, but then afterwards, whichever varieties show promise, in BARC they have collaboration with a very large number of agriculture universities. And it's the joint collaboration between BARC and agricultural universities that has led to this. And then the nomenclature for these varieties is also like that. For example, all varieties in the market which will be there with T, you can say that T stands for Trombay.
Trombay. And by the way, this is Trombay, and Trombay is an anglicized version of
Turbay.
Turbay.
Yeah. So these, but their varieties will be TAG and then some number.
Right.
The T is Trombay, A is Akola, the agricultural university at Akola, and G stands for groundnut.
Groundnut. Oh, I see.
Or TPG. So the T for Trombay, P for Fully. So there
University.
Could be G, there could be U for Udat, there could be M for Boom.
And these are commercially available?
Well, I think I have lost count now, but last count I had, there are more than 40 varieties which have been formally released. And there is a varietal release committee at the central government level.
And so, sir, this is a digression, but a very important digression. This at a time, how do you look at this great fear of genetically modified seeds? And we also know what's happened just now in Sri Lanka with this organic revolution, which caused a different kind of revolution, which starved the people and caused this revolution. So why this fear of genetically modified feeds if we can use nuclear induced mutations? इतना डरते क्यों हैं लोग?
Well, first of all, see, these things have to be done with care. Any new development have to be done with care. And there are even genetically modified
We have cotton in India.
Very important. And this development, there are modalities. You carry out work in the lab, then you carry out, just like this, carry out work in the field. And that, they call it confined trials. So those fields, you make sure that from there nothing can go outside. And there are these modalities which...
So once these modalities are done, then we should not fear.
According to me, we should not, because this all get tested out. Everything gets tested out. But then there are, of course, some ideological fixes in the minds of people. And so that's a societal problem which needs to be... But, and I think it's very unfortunate that we are in that trap. But I think it's very important. Going forward, missing out on that development, I think could cost us dear.
Is there sufficient backing, from the government for research into this use of nuclear energy? or
No, nuclear energy, I think there is good backing. But
yeah, this
what
particular
Mr.
use of,
Gupta
yes,
said,
yes.
Genetically modified.
Modified, yes.
modified, there is an issue,
Okay.
even for doing research.
Even for doing research, because there are a lot of fears and insecurities. Sir, now let me bring the train back, because I pushed it in another direction. So let me get myself out of the way, and I'll take a question from one of our listeners and colleagues, friends. He's Dr. Sanjay Agarwal, who's MD and CEO of AU Small Finance Bank. And he says, and this is the theme that we're talking about. And viewers, there is a very short presentation, PowerPoint, that Dr. Kakodkar sent to me, which is his pitch for nuclear energy. It's just a few pages, so it will run on the screen as we talk, and we'll pause so you can understand it better. Frankly, he's a just see these slides and you will know what a good teacher he is, because he is a lifelong teacher. So, sir, Sanjay Agarwal wants to know, India has committed to be net zero by 2070. What are the key challenges to achieve net zero, and what will be the contribution of nuclear energy on the target? Just the question after your heart.
Yeah. Very happy to hear this question.
From a banker.
Yeah. So let me put it the following way. First of all, energy is one of the very important input to support development. And there are correlations. Initially it makes a very significant difference in whatever human development index, life expectancy at birth, and a variety of other development parameters. So initially there is a sharp contribution as the energy input increases. This development parameter sharply goes up, and then a point comes when it saturates. In the sense, more than that, same thing. The principle of diminishing return. You earn money, you benefit. If you earn beyond a limit, it doesn't make much difference. That kind of a thing. So, most of the advanced countries in the world which have high human development index, they enjoy energy consumption, per capita energy consumption, at a level higher than some threshold. If you plot the correlation, that threshold works out to be around 2,400 kilogram oil per capita per year, oil equivalent per capita per year. Now, India's energy consumption in per capita term is much lower than this. So, first of all, increase in energy utilization is very important for India.
To improve its quality of life,
Right.
its people's quality of
And
life.
it's not necessarily so in advanced countries, because for them, little increase or little decrease, it doesn't make any difference. Although it has a role in terms of economy.
Right.
The GDP growth is more or less a straight correlation, that in energy elasticity.
Energy and GDP growth go together.
Right, it goes. So, even after you reach high or the highest possible human development index, there will be always urge to consume more energy because you want to grow your economy. But that apart, we're far away from that. Now, if India has to become an important country in the world, which all of us, according to me, must aspire. So, it's important that we not only increase the energy input for the growth in economy, but also for improvement in the quality of life. And then, of course, we can, in terms of growth in economy or the energy elasticity, there are always questions of efficiency. There are many people who in fact, can work out growth in economy without consuming so much of energy. So those are the economic models. We'll keep that aside for the time being. But the fact is that we need to increase our energy consumption. And today, most of the energy that we use is fossil in nature.
Right.
So it leads to emission. And by 2070, we have to reach zero emission of, or net zero emission.
Net zero, yes.
Of the carbon dioxide. So which means that we have to grow energy consumption on one side, but come away from fossil energy. Now, so let's examine what are the other alternatives which are consistent with net zero. Obviously, renewable energy, the solar, the wind, hydro, both small hydro, large hydro, bioenergy. These are important in the Indian context. That way there is, for example, geothermal, ocean energy, and there are many other forms. But in the Indian context, they will have small contributions.
These are relevant.
At the scale we are talking about, the other things which I mentioned, they are the important thing. Now, except bioenergy, and I'll talk about bioenergy separately, all other, and of course hydro, which is saturated, I don't think we will be able to increase very much.
Anymore, right. In fact, we might struggle because of the way glaciers are now melting. And
yeah, true. And then also there is potential in Nepal and Bhutan,
right,
we can collaborate.
Right.
But there are limits to that additional contribution. And so this growth has to take place on energy sources among renewable, which are all variable. Whereas, coal it generates dispatchable power, dispatchable at will.
So,
base load.
What dispatchable means is that you know that 24/7, whatever time you need power, your grid will have power.
Correct.
Whereas if you have solar, this will be available at certain hours, but not at other hours.
Correct. So now, this variable energy is a great solution at decentralized level. I can put on the rooftop solar panels and have a small battery pack and adjust myself. What time of the day take bath with warm water, what time of the day I do cooking. If I can adjust myself, I can adjust my demand curve, as it were, with the availability of power. And this is a feasible solution, and we should emphasize it's happening. But when it comes to grid, there is also a demand curve. We can also adjust that, but there are limits to
Adjustment,
that happening.
yes.
And on the supply side, the variability depends on nature. We cannot control it. And it is in this context that availability of dispatchable power in the grid at a minimum proportion is very necessary. Because if you don't do that, then the management of the grid starts entailing higher and higher capital costs, either by way of additional capacities, which they cost profile management, or by way of additional storage. Actually, it's not or, it's and. You require investment there, investment in the storage, and you also require investment in the so-called smart grid, managing electronics to stabilize and so forth. Now, these investments are very large, and studies have shown that while variable renewable energy costs at the project end, generation end, are quite low. But if you look at it at the consumer end, they can become 3 times larger, 4 times larger.
But there's also an argument that nuclear projects are extremely capital intensive.
Yes, nuclear projects, I won't say extremely capital intensive, but intensive. For example, if you compare the capital cost per energy delivered, not per megawatt, per unit of energy delivered, nuclear capital cost is almost comparable with solar.
Well,
fact,
all right.
You can argue that is cheap.
But gives you the grid stability.
In the sense
That initial costs are high.
initial costs are definitely high. But if you are talking about a system and you look at the system cost as a whole, then you would find that the investment that one needs to make, that has to be recovered. Now, as far as the generator is concerned, he says, I have agreed to supply you at this cost I am giving you, which is cheap. But at the distribution company level, you have to have that additional investment, or whosoever is giving that power, you have to buy that power. So finally, at the consumer end, you have to pay for all that. And when I'm saying it becomes that much, it is what consumer has to pay.
So, sir, not far away from where we are sitting is Jaitapur, isn't it?
Yes, it's in the Ratnagiri district.
Ratnagiri district, where land has been acquired sitting for a very long time. And that is supposed to be India's biggest nuclear power park, 10,000 megawatts.
Yes.
6 units of about 600 plus megawatts. Do you see any hope now that work will begin on it?
Well, the project, Nuclear Power Corporation has proceeded with that project in all earnestness. The site, the land is fully acquired, and initial activities have been done more or less. Now the question is, the proposal from the EDF, who are supposed to be the suppliers of that.
EDF is a French company.
French company.
Right.
So that proposal is under examination right now, and they will have to take a decision. I believe it may take some time, because the important thing is the economic viability of that project will have to be established. But I agree with you, this process has taken rather too long. And in between, in fact, I had almost said that we have acquired these sites, and if the imported systems don't get set up there, we should set up our own reactors there, because I think that site should be utilized.
So Jaitapur got stalled for a really long time because obviously there was opposition from locals to giving their land for a nuclear project, environmental concerns, and but most importantly, in Maharashtra there wasn't much political interest in allowing the project to go forward. The Shiv Sena was strongly opposing it. Largely, in your experience, in your opinion, is that an issue for nuclear projects? Is political interest, is that low?
Well, I would say that that matter is largely behind us. Now, to your question whether the issue has vanished, I won't say that.
Not particularly with regards to Jaitapur, but is political interest in a nuclear project generally an issue?
In general terms, any big project where there are large investments, there will be issues, because ultimately these large projects, they create benefit to the nation as a whole. But the issues are related to the people who live there. So, there is that not in my backyard syndrome. Right. So it is this kind, and it affects people in many, many ways. One of the most interesting way to figure that out is my land will get acquired. Now, so some people, they look at it, land will get acquired and the land is not productive at all, as is the case in Jaitapur. They are actually happy, because people have collected money. But there are people on the fringe whose land is not acquired for the project. So they are unhappy.
So they'd rather that their land was acquired and they got the money. Thing.
So now they don't say it like that.
Right.
But it comes out in different forms. There is another thing. For example, this land acquisition, it's a kind of a compensation. Now, all power plants are on a coastline. So there is agricultural community and there is a fishermen's community. Now, fishermen's community, you don't acquire anything, and technically you don't affect anything. That activity can go on, and for that matter, little warm water actually leads to higher production of fish. But they say, what is it in it for us? All these people are getting compensation. We don't get anything. The radiation affects us also. So all I'm saying is there are many factors. There are also, if there are people who are engaged in other activities in the neighborhood, there are perceptional issues, and the prices of land go up, go down. So this is true with any big project.
But sir, nuclear projects, there is also an apprehension about radiation. Everybody is afraid of radiation and leakage.
No, that is true, but it is, I would say, largely misplaced. And this happens really because mankind's first exposure to nuclear came about by
Hiroshima,
Nagasaki bombing. So it is there very deep in our psyche. But
then sir, Chernobyl.
Then there is Chernobyl or Fukushima. Right. Now, at such location, again it causes trauma because you resort to large-scale evacuation of people, displacement on a sudden, kind of distress migration which took place post-pandemic lockdown. It creates a trauma. Similarly, you say now there is something is happening at the power plant, so all of you run, forget about it. So it creates a trauma and nobody likes it. Now, nuclear technology has been all technologies are constantly learning technologies. So if you ask me, today the nuclear technology is a vast improvement over the technology which went in Chernobyl or Fukushima reactors. If you ask me whether no accident will take place, now I think nobody can say that if there is a machinery, something will go wrong.
Right.
If you ask me that, now I'm talking about the evolved design, that can we design a reactor in a manner that even if there is an accident, there will be no offsite impact? The answer is yes.
I see.
This answer could not have given maybe 20 years ago. But today...
So now technology has evolved to a level where we can say that even, God forbid, there is an accident with the nuclear reactor, radiation will not escape.
Yeah, it will not go beyond the plant boundary.
Beyond the plant boundary.
It will not affect public.
Right.
So, but I think it will take time for that fear to vanish from minds of people. And that is a matter of familiarity. So if there are countries who do not like nuclear power, they have not installed. And the public mindset probably will remain like this.
Like Germany had nuclear power, now they've shut it down, and now they're dealing with this Russian stress.
Yes, and that although it arose because of the Fukushima sentiments.
Right.
And in Japan, they have retained nuclear as an option as a part of their long-term energy policy.
And they are not shutting down anything.
They are not shutting down. Now, the fear in the minds of public in Japan, if you say it's not there, it is there. So, but that's a collective decision. So, and it will take time. All I'm trying to say is, as a scientist, I can say this is unfounded fear. But as a person of the society, I would say there is reason for that, and it will take time.
But it needs reassurance. Yeah. Sir, again, Ramkrishnan Prayag, who wants to know, what about radioactive nuclear waste? Because there are concerns about that also.
Well, this also is another question which requires a little longish answer, which I will give. See, if you talk about just a nuclear reactor, then you put some fuel, extract energy out of it. Out comes the spent fuel or used fuel. And in many countries, India is not among them, but many countries, that is treated as waste. Now, this fuel contains, of course, a lot of residual uranium. It also contains some plutonium, but it contains long-lived fission products. It also contains long-lived actinides. The half-lives of some of them may be 1,000 years, 10,000 years, or even longer. Now, many countries, particularly led by United States, for fear of diversion of nuclear material for weapons purposes, legitimately or illegitimately. They took a policy decision during the time of President Jimmy Carter that US will not support reprocessing.
Right.
And so they put spent fuel as waste and try to dispose it. That, according to me, is a unresolvable proposition. And I'll talk about that.
That's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea. It can never be resolved.
Right.
And I made this statement as a president of a conference organized by IAEA on this subject. And I thought people will pounce on me, but nobody, everybody kept quiet. But look at countries like India, France. Now, we have interest in utilizing thorium. Now, thorium can be utilized only by going through a sequential development of uranium reactors, followed by fast reactors, followed by thorium reactors. So, we are talking about this development in which reprocessing is an very essential element. The spent fuel coming out of uranium reactors, you have to recycle, refabricate for fuel for fast reactors. Spent fuel coming from fast reactor, you have to recycle, refabricate. So reprocessing is inherent, and we believe that we can carry out reprocessing in a responsible way. Control, IAEA safeguard system is there, and of course national systems also will be there. So we can make sure that.
So are we doing reprocessing?
Yes, of course, because that's the basis of our approach to thorium, the 3-stage nuclear power program which Dr. Bhabha has started. This is at the base. So for us, spent fuel is not a waste. For us, spent fuel is a resource.
Is an asset. So sir, for illiterate people like me, what is the 3-stage process?
3 stages. See, India's nuclear resource endowment is modest, or I would say was, because now we have found much more uranium, but was modest quantities of uranium, but vast resources of thorium. And so our objective is ultimately, I'm not talking about net zero, but mankind will live for long, so we have to have so ultimately we have to be able to extract energy out of thorium on a very large scale. Now to be able to do that, as I said, we have to go through, because you can't begin a reactor with thorium, it has no fissile content. So you have to begin with uranium, and then, as I said earlier, go through fast reactor. And
so fast reactor is the same as fast breeder reactor.
Fast breeder reactor. So uranium reactor stage 1, fast breeder reactor stage 2, thorium reactor stage 3.
So it's like extracting juice from the same orange thrice, or the same sugarcane thrice.
Yes.
So first you do it with sugarcane full of juice, that's uranium. So you take it out, then you take it to fast breeder reactor, which squeezes it more, and then you take it to a pressurized heavy water reactor.
Thorium reactor.
Thorium reactor. Yeah.
The thorium reactor, again, there could be variations, but let's not go into that detail.
Yes. But so our whole indigenous design is pressurized heavy water reactor.
Yes, that is the first stage.
First stage. For uranium.
For uranium.
And then we go.
Yeah. So what I was telling was that we are pursuing this 3-stage program in which reprocessing is an important.
So we are not throwing away spent fuel.
We are throwing away nothing.
Nothing.
So against, let's say, if you talk about typically 1 ton of waste which arises as a result of first stage, or as a result of, let's say, a country which does not adopt reprocessing. So there is 1 ton waste. So for them, they have to deal with 1 ton waste. In India, we will reprocess that 1 ton waste, and around 95 to 98% is uranium and plutonium, which will all recycle. So my waste has become just 2% to 5%. Now, out of this 2% or 5%, of course, we have shrunk that much, but we have now developed technologies in India where you can separate long-lived fission products, you can separate these actinides, and if you take them away, then the rest of the waste, its half-life, instead of thousands and tens of thousands years, it will reduce to a few hundred years. Okay. Now that is what I can put them in a repository, and 300 years is comparable to institutional life. So while I am keeping it under institutional control, all that material will decay down, and I can say that in that institutional life, 200, 300, 400 years, its toxicity should come back comparable to, for example, a uranium mine, which has been existing in nature. So according to me, when people talk about waste problem, it is that the mindset of don't touch spent fuel, just bury it. And that I still claim that is an unsolvable problem because of the legalities connected.
Yes, where do you bury? Nobody wants it buried. So, sir, do you have any advice for the Germans?
Well, advice can be given free, so.
Yes.
I think, or for that matter, I do imagine that over a period of time, because these are all countries which are very advanced in technology, see, when it comes to net zero, for example, now in Germany they are talking about phase out of nuclear, but that does not mean that their coal consumption has gone to zero.
In fact, they are upping the coal consumption.
And of course, they are dependent so heavily on the gas, Russian gas. Now, so when it comes to net zero, I think if you depend purely on renewable energy, this is going to be unaffordable. It is certainly unaffordable to poor country like India, but I dare say it is going to be unaffordable to a rich country like Germany as well. So I hope one day they will come back.
Change their minds.
So you were one of the key architects of the Indo-US nuclear deal. It's been 17 years now. In hindsight, how do you see it having helped us, affected us in any way?
No, I think, well, Indo-US nuclear deal had many dimensions. And there are many important dimensions well beyond nuclear energy itself. And many of them have been realized. So, India is not the same country as it was before. So, and that's not what we'll discuss now. But talking about nuclear, the important thing is, before this, we were, as I said, India is a country with very modest uranium resources.
Right.
And our reactors, which were running well, they were suffering because of non-availability of uranium. And the capacity factor of these units was progressively going down. Today, because we are able to access uranium from outside, all our reactors are running near full capacity. So that is one plus. Similarly, in terms of growth of capacity building, there was a natural limit, because if you don't have uranium, how much you can build. So now, for example, in addition to the existing running program, there is a new build happening in domestic program. For example, there are several PHWRs, 700 megawatt PHWRs under construction.
I think about 10 or more.
Well, the number of 700 megawatt reactors under construction would be around 16.
16?
16, 700
and
megawatts.
Each one would be about 700?
Each one would be 700 megawatt. So that construction program we could take on.
Sir, who makes these?
Everything is done in the country.
But who in the company?
Indian industry. It could be L&T, it could be BHEL, it could be Walchandnagar. Several Indian industries they are doing. So we have a well-evolved industrial infrastructure for manufacturing. So it's all Atmanirbhar Bharat.
Right.
Built, not just built in India or manufactured in India, but designed, visualized, everything, made in India. So that is happening. That's a plus. Then we are getting additional capacity from outside. For example, Kudankulam, we had just 1 and 2 at that time. Now there is construction going on for Kudankulam 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe more. We just now talked about a proposal from the French EDF, and hopefully that takes on. There is a similar proposal from Americans, Westinghouse. And so although these reactors to be set up on international cooperation, they are not gone as fast as one would have liked. But the door is open, and the problems are not, there are other problems which are holding.
They are not insurmountable, but they are.
Yeah, so, but the fact is there is so much of momentum which is taking place. I, for one, would have liked this to be even higher.
Right.
But that's a separate story.
Sir, question from Shiv Kumar Srinivasan, who's from IIT Madras. And he says IITs have excellent labs which are funded well, but undergraduates rarely go to these labs. They have no interest. I don't criticize them, but that's how they are chosen, because of the JEE exam. Isn't it time for us to move to a system with a parallel entry for those who excel with their hands, with innate engineering sense? It greatly promotes undergraduates utilizing the value of 300 plus labs that each older IIT has with excellent faculty to mentor. And then he goes on to add, we need Dhonis and Ramanujans of innate engineering who take India to self-reliant India.
Very good question, very important question. And of course, it deals with higher education rather than nuclear energy. But I would be happy to respond to that. It's a very important question. Now, see, India, as far as higher education is concerned, has two challenges, according to me. Because challenges are many, but two big challenges. One, India has to be, in terms of technological capability, on par with the best in the world. So, there should be no gap in technological capability between India and the best in the world. Now, this can be realized only by our elite institutions like IITs. And IITs are doing that. That contribution is coming. Now, while that is important, as far as India's growth story and the development story is concerned, that will not be complete by just being on par with the rest of the world. We have to also bridge the gaps that exist internally, because otherwise there is this huge disparity, and the disparity may become difficult to manage if it is beyond a limit. Now, to be able to do that, I think it's important that we need to bridge different kinds of divides, but I will say primarily the urban-rural divide. You must make rural India as competent in technological terms as the urban India, which itself should compete with the rest of the world. Now, approach of a higher education institution to be on par with the best in the world and to bridge these gaps within the country, we have to pursue both these approaches, but they are not identical. Because there is hand-holding, capacity building, and that kind of activity on one side, and the other side to really be on the forefront of technology. And I do share this thought that while IIT should take care of the global challenge first, because they are the only people who can do that, they should spend, and IITs are spending time in capacity building of the second-tier institutions,
Right.
who in turn could do this bridging, and IIT should play a direct role in that part of the bridging. Now, coming to that specific question about giving admission
JEE.
on differential criteria, now I think one has to one has to be very rigid on the admission criteria,
Right.
because that's a matter of excellence. How do you judge excellence is an issue. And is JEE the only way of judging excellence? I would say not necessarily. It certainly is a way, but not necessarily. So we should be able to devise a criteria, a method, an examination, which is equally selective. Because otherwise what will happen is, in the name of Dhoni's, some non-performer may get in. Right. That should not happen. Right. So that is the challenge, but otherwise I think that point is correct.
Sir, Sandhya Ramesh is our science editor. She says that 50 years ago you went to Birmingham to study. How would you compare science education in India then compared to, say, what you studied in Birmingham? And what are the standards of science education today compared to what they might be at the best campuses overseas? Is the gap more or less?
I think if you compare, let's say, our IITs, or also some of the other better IIT, I won't say, when I say IIT means IITs and other better institutions.
ISERs and
ISERs, some NITs, I won't say all,
some
but
NITs.
some NITs. There are some very good private engineering colleges. So they are good. And I would say in terms of their own disciplines, they are quite comparable with nearly the best in the world.
So the gap now is less than it was 50 years back.
In certain institutions.
If you talk in terms of discipline on this apex institution, the gap probably is less. But there is still a big difference. And that is, most of the so-called top-notch universities, I wouldn't call Birmingham in that class, but most of the top-ranking universities of the world, they are far more holistic compared to what IITs are. IITs are making that effort. Since IITs are encouraging humanities and economics and management. But by and large, they are engineering and technology-based institutions. So, while I said that they are comparable with the best in their own respective disciplines, some of them at least, I wouldn't say as an institution they are comparable. And what I mean by that is, same question, that earlier question was there, that I may be able to deal with a subject very well. Whether I will be able to deal with a real life problem equally well is questionable. And the best universities, they are able to do so because of their holistic environment. And there I think we have to make some progress. And that is one of the, we need multidisciplinary research universities which are science-based.
How good is the quality of young scientists these days in your field?
Well, I would say, again, in my field or other fields, Indian young people are I think they're about the best in the world. And I have no hesitation in saying that younger people are better than their previous generation. Absolutely no doubt. However...
That's what makes you a great teacher.
However, there is this issue about the real life problem solving capability. To go deep in a discipline is one thing, and to address that knowledge, to deal with the problems of society or mankind is quite another thing. Because the problems are not problems of a discipline. Right. You have to bring several disciplines to bear on that. And this is where I think we need to make a lot of.
So at a time when we are talking about more investment in science and technology, education and research, the government has decided to pull out its backing to the Indian National Academy of Engineering, which has produced so many luminaries. What do you think about this?
Well, put it this way. No, I wouldn't say Indian National Academy has produced luminaries. It's an academy where, academy basically
where luminaries gather.
Yeah, where luminaries gather.
Luminaries gather, and academies, professional society or any society, you can apply and get admission. Academy, you don't get admission by applying.
Right.
You have to be invited.
Yeah, it's like fellow of everybody has fellow Royal Society.
Right,
or-
exactly.
Right.
So, Indian National Academy has pursued this peer process and progressively assembled the best engineers of this country, or people who have made best contribution in engineering and technology in this country. So in the sense, they are people who have insights on technological developments, possible role in national development, and create a lot of advice for government and society. So that is the body. Now, I think any country or any good society, I would say you can judge the level of that society, or say level of enlightenment in that society, by looking at such institutions. How many are there and what is their level and things like that. And so it is very important that they need to be publicly funded. In a sense, corporate coming and supporting is a welcome step. But nothing comes without strings, even in plain philanthropy. So naturally, you create an institution on funding by somebody, that somebody had some interest.
Right.
Now, directly or indirectly, short term or long term, you tend to kind of serve that interest. Now, that's not a good thing to happen. And that's why public funding is very necessary. So I'm very, very uneasy when I heard this, that the government is withdrawing.
So, sir, you rarely tweet, but keep doing it, because it was your tweet on this that alerted us to this story. And we did that story, and the government then said that there's no final decision. So I'm sure once they hear from you, they will look at this again, because you are held in such high respect in any establishment.
No, of course, normally I tweet some positive developments,
Right.
just to bring that forth.
Right.
But this time I got so disturbed.
But you
that
speak for science, which is very important.
Yes.
See, Indian science needs leaders, and Indian science has had great leaders. So that's why, your voice matters so much, because you've done this all your life, Manasi.
Coming back to the Indo-US nuclear deal, a light-hearted question on that front. In your book, you had mentioned that, when you first met the US president after the Indo-US nuclear deal was signed, he said, "Oh, you are that Kakodkar." And you were described as a 100-ton gorilla who spoke logic but wouldn't budge.
I think 600.
600 pounds.
Okay.
So what happened exactly?
No, see, the point is, when these negotiations were going on, larger geopolitics, it appeared to be that there is some convergence, congruence. So everybody on both sides, they are very excited that we should do this. So when it comes to sorting out the nuclear matter, there has been a so-called non-proliferation architecture, and there is a fairly large intellectual power in US which has really built this non-proliferation architecture.
So they were called ayatollahs of non-proliferation.
Ayatollahs,
Right.
okay. So obviously when
Led by Leonard Spector.
okay, so when it came to developing this cooperation, obviously, so just like in India we have several fractions or factions. Similarly, same is the case in all countries. So this was a very strong group. So they said, let us extract as much as possible right now, because afterwards probably nothing may happen. And so the question was, we must put Indian program under control. Now, of course, that India had declared itself as a nuclear weapon state was a fact. And now you can't be agreeing to conditions where India is a nuclear weapon state today and tomorrow it is not. You can't
Right.
get into that. So we had to create a framework for India where India is able to pursue its development, both in the military side as well as on the civilian side, to meet its own requirements. It's not necessary that somebody will say this is in your interest, that is
Right.
All that could be determined by it. So that autonomy of decision making and pursuing that path was extremely important. So it was with that condition I had drawn some red lines. That I am for cooperation, but thus far and no further. Now, negotiators are negotiators. They want to, and they found that I was probably a tough guy, unreasonable at times. So maybe our people also found me very unreasonable. And then the fear was that if that be so, whether this will break down, this great opportunity, whether it will. So there was all that tension on both sides. The tension on American side. It is. So that is where I think there was this US-India forum.
Right. Business
Forum, US-India.
USIBC, I think.
So they have been, their missions have been coming. There are people from both India and US side. And their job was to lobby. They have been lobbying in Delhi, they have been lobbying
in Washington.
And I think they have made a contribution, let's say that. But they somehow got this wind that, everything is all right, but the fellow is, there is this fellow.
So does it look like a 600-pound gorilla? Physically is a lightweight, but scientifically and in terms of moral authority,
it is those people,
big heavyweight.
They gave out to US media, not here, the US media, this nomenclature. So that is how it stuck. And so that, of course, I never got perturbed out of that.
So when did you run into the US president?
No, this was after everything was resolved. We went through all this, as you said.
And it was resolved to your satisfaction?
Go down the wire, all that thing happened. It was resolved then, and this was happening when, as President Bush was arriving to India, because, the maximum crisis was the day before or 2 days before.
Right.
So that is where when he saw me, oh, you are the fellow. Basically, he meant you are the culprit.
But sir, did he know, would he have known of your other avatar, that, all that you did for the weapons program, you even traveled incognito, if I may, because you have mentioned it once, so I can say that. So tell us that story, because the generations don't understand these things.
Yeah, no, of course, I don't think he has any reason to know that. But no, it's a question of, see, when the weapons development program was on, there was, it had to be done with a very great level of secrecy, because it would have been a great embarrassment for the government if this was kind of dug up prematurely. And it could be, and it could have a lot of political backlash and things like that. So it was clear to me that if something like that gets detected, we will be completely disowned. This is a mad fellows, they have done something.
Yes.
So naturally, we had to take precautions to make sure that you don't leave any trail. And as a part of that, the work has to go on. So you have to do it with minimum number of people. That is the first step. Second is you have to do it in a manner that you don't leave any trail anywhere. So that is the second precaution. And in fact, you don't write down anything also.
Right.
So everything
It's
written
all done orally and in your
orally,
mind.
not to talk on telephone, and it's all like that. So traveling incognito was part of.
So what was the name you used for traveling?
Well, that was. See, I was supposed to go somewhere and meet somebody, and at the airport somebody was to meet me, and so I was given a name, and I was supposed to meet somebody, and then he was to take me. So at the airport, by the time I landed there, I forgot about all this. So I was only looking for somebody, and I thought normally, if somebody with a flag will come and all. I didn't find anybody. So I was looking here and there. Now this gentleman, obviously, he probably knew my face, so he had identified me. But he came and asked me, "Are you Dr. Rao?" So that was
Which
the
was your
given
name?
to me. And I was.
You said, "No, I'm Kakodkar."
So I said, no. So then he said, no, sir, I have understood, but I'm supposed to meet you. Oh, you're supposed to meet me. And then I remembered that I was supposed to meet
Dr. Rao. At which airport was this?
Now you're asking. It was Bangalore airport.
Bangalore airport.
You know, a lot of these stories are making their way into pop culture now. There's been a movie, then there's Rocket Boys. Did you watch the series? What did you think about it? In fact, Anushakti Nagar is also a part of Rocket Boys.
Well, see, there are two things. Rocket Boys is about Baba Sarabhai and space program. There was a movie earlier than that called
Parmanu, yes. Yeah.
Which has
right, John Abraham and yes.
But I, as a matter of principle, don't watch these movies.
Because I believe Parmanu makers came to ask you for help.
Yes, in the sense, they came to me, and so I told them that, look, what is it that you want me to? I'm not going to tell you anything. So they said, no, we don't expect you to tell us anything, but we are going to picturize this. So we want to be just sure that this picturization is realistic or unrealistic. So to that extent. So I said, that how will, unless I see, how do I say? But I also told them that, look, if you ask me, you will not be able to go anywhere close to realistic thing. And so it may be science fiction of interest to people. So that's okay, I have no issue there. But you put a big caption that this is a work of science fiction and no
resemblance to any person living or dead.
Or some such thing. So then I asked them that you first put that kind of a disclaimer, so which they said they will do, and I believe, I have not seen that they did that. So afterwards, I don't care.
And Rocket Boys, we spoke about it.
Yeah, we spoke about that. So this is one of the question is not necessarily on science, but anything which has an history or historic significance, contemporary history or past history or whatever. I think once because people go and watch because they think there is semblance to what actually happened.
Right.
Yes.
And then, so it's actually deceiving people. So to that extent, I don't like, and that's why I don't go and see this. I told Shekhar also that this Rocket Boys I have not seen, but we had a long chat.
About.
But the important thing is, otherwise you make it completely fiction.
Yeah, and call it fiction.
And there are very good movies of that kind. Right. The China Syndrome is one.
Yeah, the fiction, yes.
To what extent they have taken it.
Right.
But it's a work of fiction. Nobody can connect it to a real event. Then it's a different story. But, and this is, I have this comment even for non-science movies connected with history and several controversies which take place. You link it with a event in history and say this is work of fiction or this is artistic expression. I have some difficulty.
Difficulties with that. Yeah. Because now there is a new one coming out called Rocketry, and that's about Nambi Narayanan and ISRO.
Acha, okay, I didn't.
So did you have a view on that ISRO case? Was there a spy case or not a spy case?
Well, I can't say for sure, but things have gone beyond limits, that is for sure. It could have been handled much better.
Things with investigation had gone beyond limits.
Yes, I think. The point is, you punish people for nothing.
That's
you
right.
destroy lives of people
For nothing, yes.
for nothing. So, so that there is a problem in ours. I think all systems are.
All systems.
All systems. There is no problem.
See, our system, they just paint something on somebody's back and then demonize the
Correct.
person.
So,
And once the police gets in, then it's a police mindset.
yeah, because problem is, I will tell in a little benign sense, many of these movies come, many people have become Sadhu Mahatma by accident. But once they become one and they are put on the pedestal,
Right.
it's very difficult to dismount.
Right.
So I think our police fellows, once they get into such an inquiry, very difficult for them to say there is nothing in it, because they get so excited about it. So they think there is something great, will become great investigator or something.
And in the process, lives
So
are
that
destroyed.
puts them on a pedestal.
Right.
After that, they cannot come down. That is the problem.
That's the problem.
So just going back to the topic that we started the conversation with to end our discussion. In India's race to net zero, when we committed that we would be net zero by 2070, and you say that nuclear should have a significant contribution to it. Have the administrators, have those who have committed to that kind of a deadline, is that in their calculation? What is the mix that is being thought about?
Well, I think awareness about that probably is very little. It's
Very
not
little.
there. Very little. But it's very important, and it's almost sure. In the sense, as I was mentioning, without nuclear, in a net zero case, purely driven by variable renewable energy, the cost of electricity to the consumer would become quite high. And this is very, very clear. That is, although the renewable energy is much cheaper, but that is as produced. As delivered, it will be very expensive. And if you have larger share of nuclear power, the cost to consumer will come down.
Come down.
And in this presentation, there is a graphic which is actually a study done by MIT. And at that time, there was no study done in Indian case, but now we have some studies done by IIT Bombay. There is a study which is being done by IIM Ahmedabad, Vivekananda International Center Foundation. They are piloting a study. So all these they bear out these conclusions. Now, key point to recognize is, see, there is a cost of clean energy transition. Now that cost, it runs in trillions of dollars. So there are large sums. And the cost difference between nuclear and no nuclear is also in trillions of dollars. So you may have to spend that much extra money.
To begin with.
Well, no, over a period of time.
Right.
But it is going to cost you. So it's not only the consumer will have to perpetually pay more cost because you have invested more money, but you have to also, as a nation, invest that kind of money. So this is actually a very serious matter, and particularly for India, the point we should note is India we're already one of the largest grid systems. But for example, the Germany, which we are talking about, Germany grid is something like, if my memory doesn't fail me, 650 terawatt hours. India, we are already at around 1600 terawatt hours today. And we'll need to go in energy terms, total energy terms, that is, I told you 2,400 kilogram oil equivalent. In that term, we may have to go to something 4 times higher to support our economic growth or reaching that
Quality of life.
Quality of life. Now, the sources of energy, whether it is nuclear, solar, wind, they all primarily produce electricity. So, in the overall energy mix, today electricity occupies maybe 18%, 20%.
Nuclear.
No, electricity.
Electricity, okay.
Electricity.
Okay.
Now, in the clean energy transition, because all primary sources,
Including
they all
vehicles.
produce, including vehicle, we are talking about electric vehicles, so again
Right,
electricity.
right.
So the electricity system, which today is around 20% of the total energy system, could well become, I would say it could become 50% of the energy system, or even 80% of the total energy system. That depends on how hydrogen is produced. Because hydrogen you can produce, today we know only through electricity. So it will have to be, our electric system may have to be as big as 80% of the total energy. Hydrogen can also be directly produced by utilizing high temperature heat coming from nuclear or solar, whatever. In which case, it may not be that large a fraction, but it will still be around 50%. So, today we are 1600 terawatt hours, which is larger than Germany. We may become 20 times bigger in the new. And on its electricity grid systems, which is that large, if you are now talking about an option which is 3 times more expensive to the consumer, you imagine the economic implications. So I think nuclear is, it's easy, that part is right, as you said, that the capital cost is higher. But so is the capital cost for solar for a similar electricity production, not megawatts, electricity production. And if you have to install that capacity 3, 4, 5 times more, naturally all that will have a cost implication. So this is something which is, according to me, not sufficiently understood. And but this presentation you have as all the
That's the
answers.
reason we had this conversation, and we will share also a link of that presentation, so you can read it. It's a public document, and if you are a teacher, please use it to also teach your students.
And we'll end on that note. Thank you so much for a thought-provoking and informative discussion. That was Dr. Anil Kakodkar. I am Manasi Phadke, and with my editor, Shekhar Gupta. Thank you for watching The Print Off the Cuff.
And I hope Dr. Kakodkar believes that we were good students in this class.
No, I think journalists are also great teachers. Because in science and technology, it should not be, but by and large, we tend to be narrow focused. And talking to people like you, it kind of opens up, which is extremely important.
You are very large-hearted always. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The Print Off the Cuff, presented by IIFL Wealth and Asset Management, corporate partner AU Small Finance Bank, in alliance with Jindal Steel and Power Limited, airline partner SpiceJet.